Everybody expects things to go a certain way in life. Everybody expects people to treat them with respect. Everybody expects things to work the first time. Everybody expects the government to not tax them that hard. Everybody expects to get the raise. Everybody wants to get the raise. Everybody expects the promotion. Everybody expects the woman or the man or the partner that they have to love them unconditionally. Everybody expects for the stars to align. But what's funny is none of the things that we desire the most are actually true. And in order for them to even come close to what we want to be or want them to be, we have to make a change.
That's a very interesting take. I would say I'll start off with an issue that I have with people. So we have a lot of complainers in this world. We know a lot of complainers that surround or have surrounded us before. And one of the main things that they always like to do is to complain about how the state of the world is, or the state of their current situation is. And more often than not, they complain and complain and complain, but rarely do they have a solution or they offer up a solution. And in my opinion, what is the point of you even talking to me right now if you don't have a fucking solution? You're just, like that one person in our comment section said, yapping, as the young kids like to say. You're yapping at that point.
2 people actually said that.
Wow.
The first one said yap, yap, and the other one just said yap.
Oh, the vocabulary on these guys.
It's getting better and better.
Yeah.
It went from 2 words to 1.
Astounding. But at that point...
That's a hard word for them too, Austin. You have to dumb it down for them.
I apologize.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I can't even think of a word that's smaller to try to do something like that. But basically, to me, you're just yapping at that point. If you're not offering up a way to make whatever it is that you're complaining about better, and if you're not offering up a solution, then shut the hell up. And this reminds me of a story that you told me of your dad. He was talking to a particular person who is very, 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 very successful. And he met this guy this one time, and he was telling this man about the problems that he was facing in his particular job. And I'm not saying that he was complaining, but
no, he was.
He was talking to this man about this current situation and all the things that are going wrong, and just the problems that he was facing in this particular realm. And the man stopped and basically asked, well, what are you going to do about it? What are your plans to fix this? What are your solutions that you have to solve, this problem that we're having?
What are you doing about it? Not what do you plan? What are you actively doing to solve your problems that you're having?
So in that case, it's like, well, I don't think your dad had a answer for that at that particular moment.
He just sat there and looked at him, and he was like, okay.
So in that particular moment, the other person, who will go unnamed, he didn't want to hear the problems that were going on, or if they didn't come with a solution as to how they were going to get fixed or resolved. So if you see a problem in this earth or in this world that you think is monumentous, and you just think it's just such a terrible thing that this is going on in the world, well, instead of just sitting there and complaining about it and typing away on your keyboard like a fucking nincompoop, you know what I think that you should do? Try to solve it. And again, in our previous episode, we talked about, if you shoot for the stars or land on the moon, if you try to solve it, you never know how close to accomplishing something that you can get, or you never know if you will actually accomplish it. You'll never know until you try. So if you're looking for some change to happen in the world, don't just sit on your ass and complain about it. Get out and actually try to solve it yourself.
Change is an interesting concept because change is going against the grain.
Right.
Change normally indicates that you are deviating from a norm or a custom, and that requires a substantial amount of activation energy. And I have this quote right here. Laziness together with fear is one of the greatest enemies of actions. And I would like to posit that you require action in order to make a change. But it's also interesting because laziness is something that is included in human nature. Laziness is an adaptation for humans to conserve energy. And also, laziness in a sense helps creative energy because it allows you to just kind of sit in stillness. But change is something that can't be brought about by laziness nor a lack of inaction. Change requires you to develop processes, like you said. Change requires you to evaluate problems, also like you said, and come up with solutions that can help you circumvent the negative issues that those problems have. And not a lot of people want to do that. And that's okay, because if you can separate change into two extremes. And I was actually talking about this with a beautiful lady yesterday. If you change too often, you have no foundation and you have no sturdy ground because you have no guiding light. Because whatever comes your way, you adapt to it and you change. You're too flexible. If you're too rigid, meaning you never change, then you're also missing out on the potential benefits of having a great variety of changes or fluidity. And we've talked about this in the past as well. There's a reason why the hull of a boat is curved. And that's because a straight piece of wood, we'll use wood for this example, would get absolutely decimated by the waves and the rocking of the boat. So when the ocean attacks, you would get destroyed. That's actually why the hull of a ship is curved, so that that does not happen. And so that's to say you need to strike a balance between fluidity and rigidity so that you can make that change. But you also have to understand when that change is proper. Because the majority of things we talk about on this podcast are not black and white. There's a lot of gray area. When you need to change might not be when somebody else needs to change. Depending on your circumstances, an example might be you have to contradict the positive, or not the positive. You have to contradict the common belief of a group. Let's say it's a work group, and everybody thinks that option A is the best option. But you see that option D far, far outperforms and outweighs option A. Now you realize that, hey, if we go through option A, we can absolutely go bankrupt within the next 2-3 years because the forecast is not well. It's optimistic at best, but optimism does not pay the bills. Reality does. And so that's a moment where you say, hey, I'm going to have to be the one who makes the change. And in order for me to impact my surroundings, this group, for me to affect my opinion and the logic surrounding my opinion to this group, I have to be the change. I have to communicate the change, and I have to help sow the seed and water that seed amongst that group to germinate and bring that idea into fruition.
And watering the seed is a very good point there. So be the change you want to see in the world. When people think about this, you focus on the word change, of course. And when people talk about it, it's like, okay, look, I have to change my mannerisms. Do I have to change the way that I do things? Do I have to change, my hair? Do I have to change my beard? All that stuff, right? But when we say be the change that you want to see in the world, it's really more along the lines of do more of what you wish someone would have done for you, in my opinion. Because along people's journeys, we've heard stories of people saying, hey, I didn't have someone like this that could be a mentor for me like I am doing for you guys. I didn't have someone to guide me in the right direction here. I didn't have someone to point me in the direction of a bank to go to, or a person to seek accounting information from, a person to, do taxes through and what have you. I didn't have someone to help me with that. So when you are lucky enough to experience this mentorship or, tutelage from someone, you have to think about, hey, this helped me so much in this time. I learned so much from this person. Now it is almost my right. It is almost mandatory of me to do this for someone down the line. Because if you've ever had to do something by yourself, or just, the two of you, or however many of it is y'all, if y'all had to do that by yourself with no help and nobody to kind of guide you in the right direction, you know how difficult it can be. So if you have any decency and somewhat of a heart, you would say, well, I wouldn't want someone who has the same aspirations as me to have to go through that same tough time, unless you're an asshole. But if you're not, you would want to impart that wisdom onto someone. So for me, I think it's very important, and that's why we also have this podcast, is to help you all mitigate or navigate the roadblocks that we've encountered. And hopefully you don't have to spend as long of a time and have the same headaches that we had to when we were facing all of this. So pay it forward when you're thinking about trying to be the change you want to see in the world. You have to pay the knowledge and wisdom that was shared with you forward to the next generation, because everyone shouldn't have to struggle how you struggle. And one of the main things that we like to do for our families is to make life easier for them, so they don't have to go through the same things or face the same problems that we face. And if you care about the world, and if you care about the people around you, share the wisdom that you have been given, so that they can in turn learn from that, learn from you, build their own business, their own company, their own what have you, and then pass it on to the next generation, then the next, and then the next, and then the next.
Now, I think some people, at least in my community and in my culture, have a very particular fear, and that's a reason why they don't provide mentorship. And
a fear of what?
A fear that if they give you information, you will outcompete them.
Oh yeah, that's in our community too.
What is your input here? I'm curious to know.
I would say, because initially, early on in this, I kind of felt similar, but now I'm like going through all the shit that we went through, and all the hours, all the work, all the fucking sleepless nights and shit like that we had to go through. Even if I do give you the information, good luck. And that's one of the things that we apply for our business. It's like we were talking with your dad, I believe, and he was saying, well, are you sure you want to put this information about, all this in the, the cards here or whatnot? And because we actually been through it, it's like, okay, we can put the information. Doesn't mean that you'll take the steps to actually do the shit. And when we were having a conversation with someone else, they're like, yeah, I heard about these two guys that seem to be doing the same thing that you're doing. And we were like, well.
And the irony of that is they might have actually been talking about us. We just didn't know it.
Exactly. But that's one of the things. Even if they were talking about someone different, it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Fine. Because we know how difficult it is to do it in the first place. So even if you tell someone information, one, they'd actually have to fucking be receptive to listening. Then they'd have to apply it. And then they'd actually have to put in the work to do it. So even if you apply the shit that we give you and give you a shortcut, I guess, to doing some shit, that's fine. Now you have that shortcut, you can go that way. But you also have to factor in the experience that we've gained because we didn't have that shortcut. How much do we know and how much are we willing and able to put up with because we had to figure everything out the hard way?
Right. What happens if you encounter a blocker that we already passed and we mentioned to you, but you just don't know the solution?
Exactly.
It's going to take you longer because you're going to have to understand the process that we already bled to understand.
Right.
And not only that, usually 9 times out of 10, you're already going to have a product on the market. And if you hit a certain blocker, you could derail your entire sales channel, which is going to leave a lasting negative impression on those customers that you had or potential future customers and even investors.
There you go.
If you zoom out enough.
Exactly. And one thing that I've been seeing a lot of recently is, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but they're like, if you're looking to get your first million or a couple millions, one of the things that you more often than not do is you're working by yourself. However, if you're looking to get up into the tens or hundreds of millions, normally that happens by partnering with someone else for something, or merging or acquisitions of some sort, as opposed to just saying you have your one entity. You might be collecting entities to shape or to create a bigger entity to amass those large amounts of wealth. So if you get to a certain point to where you're sharing information with someone, you might be a little bit hesitant in doing so. Why are you looking at them only as a competitor when you could potentially utilize them as an ally or utilize each other as allies?
Not only that, my take on it is that if you're afraid to give advice within a similar domain that you're in, that means you're actually not as good as you think you are. And even if you won't admit it, your subconscious is telling you that you can't give out this information because you'll lose your competitive advantage.
Right.
Which means A, either you don't have the best product in the market, B, you don't have the best sales on the market, or C, you don't have the reputation that you require within that domain. And I'll give you an example. If you and I wanted to open a bank, how smoothly do you think it would go? Competing with the big banks, Chase, Frost, you name it, Bank of America. It's not going to go well.
Yeah, it's probably going to be difficult.
It's going to be extremely difficult. So if one of the owners of the banks or COOs, CEOs, CSOs, whatever it might be, gives us advice, it's not because it's because they know that we're not going to pull a fast one from them. Because the banking industry specifically takes a lot of time to grow. You have to build relationships. You have to build connections. You have to build XYZ over years. You could make horrible decisions. You have horrible economic turns where you have to secure yourself. You have all kinds of good and bad things, but it just shows a chink in your armor.
And you know what's interesting? It's a quick little story here. You know the story of Ferrari and Lamborghini, right?
Go ahead and enlighten everybody.
So basically, Ferrari is a long-standing supercar manufacturer. You know, the best automobiles at the specific time being produced were by them. And a tractor manufacturer, I forget his first name, but last name Lamborghini, of course. He saw an error, or Ferruccio Lamborghini. He saw a way that Ferrari could improve their cars, and he saw the founder of Ferrari and said, "Hey, you know, I noticed this. This is a way that you can improve, I believe, and hey, why not you partner with me and I will let you, know my insights as to how I fix this problem with my tractors and whatnot, and you can apply it to your Ferraris and you can make it an even better car." And instead of being the change, Ferrari basically said, yeah, kick rocks and keep fucking with your tractors. You don't know shit about automobiles. And instead of being the change and saying, hey, let's work together and figure this problem out because I am trying to innovate, I am trying to get faster, I am trying to get better, he said, go kick rocks. And because of that, he ended up turning a potential ally that could have made his cars even better and could have amassed him an even larger success. Even though they're still very successful today, he went the other route and said, I don't need you. And he basically built a competitor. So you not being the change sometimes can end up being the catalyst that breeds competition indirectly. So be cognizant of that and realize that you can tell someone some information. And in my opinion, if they're smart enough and resilient enough and hardworking enough to utilize that information to get to the same level of success that you're at, then another conversation needs to be had and say, hey, I see that you're doing some great shit here, man. I have the access to these networks and I've done certain things maybe a little bit longer than you have. Why don't we partner with each other and, try to amass something even bigger here? Because again, if they have the ability to work their way up using the information that they gave you to the same point that you are, that's someone that I feel like you should try to have on your team as opposed to making an enemy for no reason other than just pride and ego. So.
And you made a very interesting point that I want to circle back to about if you want to make $1 million fast, you do it alone. If you want to make tens of millions, then you usually do it with partners or a partner. Something very interesting came to my mind. Well, why do you think that getting married is a financial decision? If it's well thought out and a well planned and well arranged marriage, it's a great financial positive and plus. And why do you think that is?
So this is hilarious coming from us two, but after the conversation that we've had, but I feel like
get money.
See, this guy's funny. But in my opinion, and I think we both understand which is why it's important for us to eventually find, our wives and whatnot. It's because I personally think that having a wife helps you in so many aspects, and marriage helps you in so many aspects that most people don't really think about. And when you think about it, it's like, oh, I'm going to be having to take care of a family. I'm going to have to take care of my wife and kids and all that shit. But you also have to think about what having a wife or a spouse gives you in return that you wouldn't be able to have otherwise. And for us in our situation, it's like, man, if we just had like a wife or whatnot that could give us peace of mind, like you don't have to do shit. You don't have to give me money. You don't have to do nothing except give me peace of mind and maybe like cook something that's about it.
Smile and laugh.
Exactly.
From time to time.
Be a joy to be around.
Exactly.
Like having that in our day to day, even though we might have to spend more money to maintain a house or a family or whatnot, it'll all be worth it for us because we have the ability to recharge. A Tesla can only go so far, even though it's a very, very productive machine. One of the fastest 0 to 60s, very innovative, electric. It can only go so far before it needs to recharge. Your wife, your spouse in a marriage is basically like a recharge station. Like
a mobile recharge station.
Exactly.
It's always full of energy.
Exactly. So having that.
It's an energy bank.
Exactly. So having that with you on your side, again, even though you might be spending money for that energy bank to maintain and to make sure that everything's working properly so it can recharge you, the recharge that it gives you to keep going and do what you need to do and be effective and be productive is 1,000% worth it. So if you're considering like, hey, should I just be out here, with these hoes or eventually get married? There's a time for everything. And, I'm not saying that I'm just trying to get married right away because one, you have to find the right person and, that takes time. But you have to realize, especially as a grown adult, and hopefully, if you're looking at as a man or a young adult, you have to realize that as a man, that having a wife and having a spouse to go through this shit with is not only beneficial for them, but also very beneficial for you. Even if you're the one spending most of the money, that's neither here nor there. You're getting so much more in return by having someone with you to go through this shit with, and create a family and create generational wealth with.
When I think of it as this way too, let's think about, I don't know I'm trying to make this scientific reference, but I don't know the reference. Well, let's look at it this way. Planets don't rotate around an axis in a perfect circle. And some planets have a circular rotation, semicircular, like it's almost circular, and some have elliptical rotations. And I would argue in life, everybody wants a circular rotation. They want something that's nice, clean, and sustainable. It makes sense. It's practical. It doesn't stress them out. They want their life to be simple and plain, like a circle or a square. But you don't see.
Yeah.
That's the best thing I was coming by. It'll make sense when I finish. But when you move with a partner, with a pair, whether it's in business or in marriage, it looks like an elliptical
Ellipsis.
Mm-hmm. So it has rather than being a nice clean circle, it has this sort of long peaks and close troughs where it's kind of just a little too close for comfort. But here's the thing. Your highest highs and your lowest lows are still going to be better than the same situation every single day. So what I'm saying here is the start might be slow, but once you gain speed, that elliptical speed, the more that ellipsis begins to form, the longer it gets and the longer it gets and the longer it gets. And so your extremes get even bigger, which means your highest highs are huge and they compensate for lowest lows, and your margin is still higher than what you would have if you were alone. And I'll give you an example financially. And I don't know, it's likely the same with you, right? But say we're making a good amount of money and then we meet a beautiful lady. Well, it's not that we don't like spending money on women, but it's that if we like them enough, we will spend the money. What does that cause you to do? Make more money. So initially, right, your bank account goes like this, starts going down. But then you're like, hey, I'm about to go broke, but I'm not going to stop treating my lady. Matter of fact, I'm going to start treating her more. But somehow your bank account starts going up. And now it's trending. But here's the thing. If you didn't have her around, you'd have no reason to go above that previous line because you don't have a purpose for it.
Right.
And so what I'm making the case for here is when you pair up in business, when you get in a relationship, whatever it might be, you're always going to see a slump. And you're always going to see the person who's doing it alone outpace you. Almost always. But there will come a point in a time when you cross that threshold where they can no longer obtain the same levels you're at. And the truth is, go ahead and make your first million on your own. But we already know you can't go beyond that to an extreme level without connections. And if you say, I'm going to be a lone wolf, even by having somebody refer you, you're no longer a lone wolf. You might still be the only sole proprietor of your business, but you're no longer alone. And that's why I urge you, gents, to go find yourself a badass lady. Also, make well-advised financial decisions.
And lastly, real quick, if you look at any of the most successful men on the planet, even if they're not with that lady still, they will all say that one of the main contributors to my success was having a wife. Now, why would they say that? I urge you to find that out and experience it for yourself. And of course, don't rush into anything without having the proper information and knowledge on the person. But I do believe that there is a correlation to having a spouse, having a wife, and the highest amount of success that you can achieve. So, but hey.
The Amco Podcast.
Signing out.
Mic check. The AM Club Podcast.